In this presentation, we will talk about the topics covered, the objectives and the results of the EASeR project. The coordinator of the project was the Italian National Fire and Rescue Service. Partner of the project were Fire Brigade of Moravian Silesian Region, Scientific and Research Center for Fire Protection, National Research Institute of Poland, and TIMESIS. The project added the support of the Italian Department of Civil Protection and the UN OSHA Secretariat. The EASeR project deals with a specific aspect of the user assessment activity called the barrier effect. Barrier effects are defined as those obstacles that slow down the assessment activity, such as blocked roads, interaction with affected population, information, and data management. Now we are going to watch a video where are described some of the most frequent barrier effects.
The film shows a link between a rescue operation and the percentage of survived victims. The line on the left represents the probability of survival. The line below represents a rescue operation. They start with activation from 30 minutes to 6 hours. It depends on the size and equipment necessary to the team. Then, we have to consider the time for transportation and for assessment. The assessment should start as soon as the first team arrives on the affected area. The rescue operation follow and may continue for 7 to 10 days. You can see that the line, after the first 24 to 36 hours, drops down very quickly. Therefore, it is extremely important that appropriate resources are assigned to each site as soon as possible. For this reason, EASeR project focuses on the assessment phase. As a matter of fact, the fastest is a EASeR assessment. The most effective the following rescue operations will be, so to increase the chance for the victims to be rescued. This film shows both human and natural obstacles that we named barrier effect. Obstacles could cause slowing down for the assessment team or operational team while reaching the most affected area. You see a small village stricken by an earthquake with the EASeR assessment team arriving. The team can face natural events like heavy snow, as it happened during Rigopiano intervention, where an avalanche caused by an earthquake destroyed a hotel. Or large landslide, as it happened also after earthquakes in the center of Italy. Also, people escaping are always present on site and they fill and occupy roads around the affected area. It is very difficult to overcome this barrier that hampers the means of transportation to move forward, especially when there is only one road. For instance, in mountains, rural areas, or old historical centers. People asking for help. Even if it is normal that people ask for help, these can heavily limit the reaching of most affected area by the team, and it could be also a trap because even if these people need help, it might be more relevant and urgent to reach the people in the most affected area. For example, outside the most affected area, people can ask to save their cattle or require building evaluation where they live or work. Last but not least, management information flow. After a catastrophic event, a lot of information is likely to arrive, Some of the news are fake, other misleading. Other ones are correct. Therefore, we should have the ability to filter, including news from social network, and identify priorities. Affected area. Once the team is in the most affected area, other difficulties are faced. The assessment teams and EASeR teams normally arrive from outside the affected area, because usually during a disaster, the rescue personnel who is inside the affected area cannot manage the assessment operation, because they might be victims themselves or being overwhelmed the first rescue operations. The video shows the difficulty for the team to penetrate the area while trying to reach the assigned sector, because the team is stopped by people who need help. Survivors expect us to help them immediately, and we cannot leave them alone because they consider our uniform a synonym of assistance. As a consequence, the team is obliged to stop and help them. For this reason, it is not easy to reach the assigned sector in the first phase of the assessment. We usefully conduct the assessment into two steps. The first one is carried out following the survivor's indications to identify rescue opportunities. The second one is then covering the assigned sectors according to the INSARAG guidelines.
The objectives of the project were to identify all the elements useful to overcome the barrier effects and improve the response capacity in a complex emergency. Awareness that the barrier effect is a real issue brings to considering barrier effects to plan so as not be interrupted by them during an emergency, covering current lack of guidelines and procedures aimed at strategic planning activities, improving team performance or outsourcing, improving communication flow, truth data management system, and new technologies. Expected results were increasing efficiency and reducing time of intervention on site. Methodology. How these results have been achieved? The first step was to try to understand if the barrier effect was a problem perceived by the project participants or was also perceived by other international user teams. To get an answer, we sent a survey to user experts from different countries of the world. The first question was the one you see in the slide. Do you think that the barrier effect have an influence of reconnaissance conducted in the emergency environment and affects the overall performance of the search and rescue teams? The answers confirm the impact of barrier effects on user activity. In the image, you can see highlighted in orange the countries that responded to the survey. In the same survey, a list of several possible barrier effects was proposed by asking interviewed which ones they thought were the most important. 10 issues have been identified. The issues identified made it possible to write an index which was the starting point for producing the project documents. The procedures written in the documents before being approved were tested and evaluated. The testing and the evaluation of the procedures were done through the organization of an exercise. This exercise was not a full-scale exercise like a MODEX. It was not a user training where we used several equipments and instruments. It was instead a tailored testing of procedures on how to mitigate the barrier effect. The script has been detailed careful to cover most of the identified barrier effects. About 200 people have been involved in the organization and delivery of the exercise. The preparation of the exercise took 5 months, from January to the end of May. The goals of the small scale exercise were to put in place barrier effects and to mitigate barrier effects applying the procedures by user assessment teams from Italy, Czech Republic, and Poland. The area chosen for the exercise was the Belize Valley in Sicily, hit by an earthquake in 1986. Poggioreale and Montevago are abandoned villages after the earthquake. The first question we asked ourselves during the preparation of the exercise was the barrier effects, how could we simulate them? First step was the deep evaluation of the topics to establish if and how reproducing the barrier effects related to them. Second step, the script. The script was developed to establish the storyline in the expecting playing time, location to play barrier effects, number of the role players we needed and roles, logistical needs. Third step, role players' tasks. Roles and sequence of interaction have been written for all. Fourth step, role players training. All role players have been trained. 26 professional actors included underage to stress out the teams and create a context close to the real emergency. 70 volunteers from the Department of Civil Protection of Sicily played as local population and first responders. Some from the Italian Red Cross, specialized in making up for exercises, participated in making up both professional actors and volunteers. 14 firefighters as victims in the working sites. 10 firefighters to play the role of first responders in some working sites. 4 firefighters to play the role of advanced command post. The staff of XCOM was composed by 27 firefighters. The final result was a film with the user assessment teams as protagonists. Now we are going to see a video of the exercise.
Unità di comando sul posto.
I zaczynamy robotę. Tak? Tak.
aiutatemi per favore.
The exercise allowed us to reproduce the barrier effects and test the procedures. Now we are going to see some of the barrier effects that have been reproduced and the measures taken to mitigate them. Road blocked. It is important to foresee the role of local driver who knows the communication routes, also alternative routes, the zone, the points of interest, the potential dangers, the language or the dialect used in the place of the disaster. Performance of assessment team. The Italian team has been trained on possible tools and solutions as described in the procedures on barrier effects. Specific training are necessary for assessment team members. Interaction with the affected population. Not only training for technical skills, but also training on managing the interaction with the affected population and the requests. Lesson held by a psychologist. Communication IT. Availability of satellite phone and began internet satellite. Incident management. Set up the user coordination cell close to the advanced command post in order to share information, reports and briefing. Incident management. Constant contact with the local authorities, interaction with the first responders. New technologies. The use of data management system Prometheus has been successfully tested during the exercise for the first time. New technologies, drones. Testing drones use procedures in collaboration with assessment teams. Use of aircraft and helicopters. Writing and testing of boarding procedures of the user assessment team. Outsourcing. Testing of outsourcing procedures between the helicopter of the Air Force and the user assessment team. To recap, the project produced 3 documents: Italian Standard Operating Procedures, International Standard Operating Procedures Outline, recommendation for different levels of rescue missions and actors. Italian Standard Operating Procedures, that is a very detailed document describing all the possible actors interacting with user assessment teams and how they could support in facing the barrier effects. International Standard Operating Procedures Outline, that is an outline stemming from the Italian Standard Operating Procedures, to be further developed and customized by a nation interested in it. Recommendations for different levels of rescue missions and actors, that is general level document who is addressed to all the actors that can be met by a user assessment team. Thank you for your attention.